All right, so I got a question for you.
Hmm?
What movie have you seen that has a really good concept but a poor execution? And if you had to redo the movie like it never existed, how would you change it?
Okay, so there's this short called Blankety.
Yes. You made me watch that. I was a
Mhm.
little confused. Let's talk about it.
So the entire thing is 11 minutes long,
Right.
and I think that is a big part of the charm about it. Actually, I think that that's perfect for the entire premise that they're trying to sell. That this movie is only 11 minutes long. It got 2 skulls on Shudder, which is 2 stars.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of the comments is because this is short, this is a waste of my time, it's like I wanted more, and it's like, you said it's a waste of your time. It's 11 minutes, start to finish with credits. You want it to be longer?
You want
You want it to be an hour and a
time?
half and like take up more of your time?
Right.
They did such a good job selling this concept in a short thing. So on IMDb, they a lot of the times when they're talking about poorly executed movies, they'll just kind of include ones that didn't do super well, even though or had like a lower budget, and so like that's just kind of what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Like they can't get everything, and so like some of them that they like consider poorly executed, I think are great movies, and so I'm gonna kind of like say this one was poorly executed in that way, that it wasn't received well.
Okay.
But I think it was actually done fantastic. And I do agree I would like to see more from it. So a way that I would do it, I don't know if I would want it without this ever existing, but I could see a full length out of this.
Okay.
Maybe they like have to come up with a script. Like they're put on a deadline. They're like, you have to make a movie. And so this program that's supposed to come up with generate a story.
Mm-hmm.
Barb and Will arrive at the house of a couple with whom they are acquainted, and it's supposed to generate a story beyond that with input data from different focus groups that are shown at the beginning. And so the program just isn't creating new stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they should do is, while they're on this strict deadline, they have to write the script themselves. And so they come up with the ideas for the story through like their actual lives of the people in the focus groups. They add things from the employees, like you can get, because they did a great job developing characters. They kind of drop you in the middle of a story and take you out right before the end.
Mm-hmm.
And so they could have like some like beginning part, like bringing you into the story some more, so you can kind of understand what the world is.
Sure.
Before it's over.
Right. More backstory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then they can, so they write the story. They're writing the story about their lives, and so it's the whole concept that I got from it was this computer is just trying to come up with stories based on what they think these focus groups will like, which is kind of what they're saying the industry is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not generating anything new because they're just looking at the same thing and asking the same people the same questions.
Sure.
And so getting like actually creating stories like with all of the people like that are around them, that can like, that is an infinitely generatable amount of stories you can have. And you switch out the people, you just like have a very like diverse, wide, differing background like team working on the script, like even if it's just for like ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the machine that they want. That's the like, it's real people.
Yeah.
And so in the movie, like the full length that the people are asking for, they could have to write this script and they put it into the computer,
Mm-hmm.
like so it looks like the computer is writing it, but it's not. And at the end, the movie's made, and the director guy, the producer, whoever he was, like the head guy,
Sure.
he finds out that they wrote the script, and he cancels the movie, and she can't publish like any like research or papers about it. Like they can't talk about it because he finds out that it wasn't actually written by the software. And so like the story, like this interesting new story that they wrote and produced, is never going to be seen.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't created by the machine. But then there could be like some sort of twist where like the machine actually, like, after reading that whole new story with actual like new perspectives,
that was all the input it needed.
Like it can start writing it. And so like, yeah, so
interesting.
I could see that being a full feature length with some things like that. That's kind of what I would try to do. That was my like first initial like, how would I make this longer? Because like I really love the concept, and I think the characters were great, really good acting, great camera work, good mood setting. The dialogue was fantastic. It was very, very believable. It's just a wacky concept. And then at the very end, when you like see Barb and Will and the couple with whom they are acquainted, in the full length, you could cut to them like actually living out the stories as they're putting in the story into the computer. You could see how they're actually doing it, because they conveyed so much with just looking at each other,
sure,
like not even saying anything. And it's kind of that whole idea of like, yeah, this happens in movies too. Like you go over to it's just relationships with people. It's what do you say next? What do you do next? What happens when Barb and Will go over to a couple that whom they're acquainted house? Like how they're acquainted with them. In what way? How what is this relationship at all?
All right.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic.
It.
Those two skulls. I don't get that. I don't get that. Waste of your time. It was 11 minutes and it was fantastic. I watched it like 5 times. So that's...
Yeah. It was good. It reminded me of like Black Mirror. You ever watched that?
Oh, yeah. I've watched Black Mirror.
It was good. I think I need to watch it a few more times in order to like grasp it better. But I did like it.
Good.
All right, so I got one. Have you ever seen the movie In Time?
I haven't.
All right, so it's a movie that had a really great concept, but it was just like some weird choices were made, and I wouldn't say it hit the mark. I don't think it focused on the wrong part of the movie. So basically the premise is time is the currency in this world. So everyone's got like a clock on their wrist.
I might have seen this, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like how much time you have is how much time you have to live. And the way you get more time is you work. So time is currency. And that's an awesome concept. Like there's so many things you can do with that. There's like, once you get to the age of like 24, you stop aging. And you can stay that age forever if you have enough time. And that's like one of the great concepts of this thing is like people can live to be like 300 years old if they have enough money. People never have to lose their parents if they can afford to keep them alive. And everyone's the same age. Like there's like the guy, the main character and his mom are different ages, but they look the same because that's how this concept works. And I think it's really solid, but the way they chose to make this movie is like a weird action film with like a weird romance that like barely goes anywhere. And I just think there's so many things that they could have played with that would make way more sense than what they did go with.
Would you keep it an action movie, or what are you thinking? What would you think about it?
An action movie could work.
Yeah, this is my...
But I think they focused on getting more time instead of like what you could do with all that time. So one of the characters is like a really rich man, and he's like 300 years old.
Okay.
And he wants to die basically. He's lived his whole life. So he gives the main character his time, and then everyone comes after the main character because they want his time, they want his money, they want to live forever. But I thought of like, how would I do this movie and how would it be different? I think thinking back to my favorite book in the world, The Count of Monte Cristo. If you've never heard of it, It's basically like a revenge thriller. So basically, and sorry if I'm spoiling this, but it was written in 1844, so you've had time to look it up. Basically, the main character's best friend betrays him and steals his girlfriend and sends him to prison because he frames him. And then in prison, he meets a man who teaches him everything. He teaches him how to fight. He teaches him how to read. He teaches him math. And like, he's in prison for years and years. Exiled. Everyone thinks he's dead because this guy tells the girlfriend that he's dead. So everyone moves on. His parents pass away. His girlfriend thinks he's dead, so she marries the friend. But he's getting smarter and he's getting stronger in prison. And all the while, they're digging their way out while he's learning all this stuff. And he eventually gets out of the prison and he exacts his revenge. And he starts sabotaging the ex-friend that set him up from afar. And he amasses this wealth with all the like smarts that he's learned. And in the end, he gets his revenge and he gets his girlfriend back, right? And I think that would be an amazing story to put into use with this concept.
Yeah.
Because one of the biggest gripes with that story is that the girlfriend doesn't recognize him when he comes out because she thinks he's dead. But if it's over the course of hundreds of years, and he's been planning this,
and he looks exactly the same, she might forget his face after a couple hundred years. So I think it would be really cool to show like the creation of when they started this time thing, and show him going through the years, amassing wealth, amassing like friends and like people that can help him on his quest to revenge. Yeah.
And then in the end, it could show them going through the decades, so it'd be like a timepiece. And then in the end, he gets his revenge. So it's like a modern retelling of The Count of Monte Cristo, but in the universe of In Time.
Would everybody have the time on their arms, or just the main characters?
No, everyone has it.
Right. But like, but there's still like the same amount of like technology and industry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it would just be a modern retelling. So like, instead of maybe going to jail, maybe he gets like exiled, or they think his time runs out, but he staggers by and he gains wealth, and he learns to make himself smarter and better.
Yeah. And
then he comes back for revenge only when he knows it will work, when he's planned it all out. And it could be hundreds of years.
Okay, so do we want to get into our indie films?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're talking about indie films that you probably haven't watched. We both picked out 2 films that we both really like, and we feel they didn't get enough attention, and we need to bring that attention. So what's your first pick?
So my first pick, I'm going to be talking about Kajillionaire.
Okay.
This one just came out like a couple months ago, and it was in theaters. And even if cooties wasn't rampant right now, I think it'd be. I don't know how well it would have done, just because it is a little eccentric, especially in the trailer.
It's very niche.
Yeah. But I think it's fantastic, dude.
Okay.
It was a really new and interesting story, from a completely different perspective than like we've seen in most things. So to set it up a little bit, the main, I'm gonna say 3 characters are this family. It's a mom, a dad, and a daughter. Daughter is 18, and so they get through life by skimming by.
Okay.
The parents don't have jobs. The daughter doesn't have a job. I don't think she goes to work or school either. I think she's like homeschooled. And they live in like this unused office building at a soap like making factory, and so like their wall like leaks bubbles at a specific time every day. It's manageable. And so like they're literally skimming off their walls like in the place they live to, and so like they walk by their like landlord and they'll like lean back over the fence or like crawl, like they're just hiding the whole time. They're like, they walk past
Does he not know that they're there?
well, he knows that they're there. I think he like feels bad for him. He's a funny character too, and they hardly even developed him. But and okay, I don't want to go all over the place, but so the family, like everywhere they go, they're looking through the newspaper. The mom's on the internet looking for like contests to enter to like win things. That's the only time they can use their phone is for necessary things or like that. So the daughter has a cell phone, and she calls this one line all the time because when they never pick up, and so there's call waiting music, and that's the only music that she gets to listen to. She doesn't have a radio. Yeah. So
is this a comedy or is it drama?
It's more comedy.
Okay.
It's not like ha ha ha.
Sure.
But like it's quirky. Okay. And in a good way.
Yeah.
Oh man, there's so many good scenes, and like it's not like so like it's got some like dramatic themes to it, but it's mainly lighthearted, I'd say. The daughter's name is, this isn't a spoiler, but this is like kind of a large thing but it doesn't spoil anything. So the daughter's name is Old Dolio.
Okay.
She got that name because that was the name of a homeless person who won the lottery. And the parents wanted her to be included in his will when he died.
Oh, wow. So they're cheapskates?
Yes.
All right.
That's what they named their daughter, Old Dolio.
Nice.
There's a lot to this movie, and it's shot pretty it's like subdued. Like the colors aren't like super high saturation. It's pretty beigey. There's some greens too, and that like their outfits are fantastic. Like the whole like the costume department did a great job because they just kind of like wear things like Old Dolio wears like a big tracksuit, and underneath it she'll have like different outfits because they do kind of heist things, but they're not. It's at like the post office, so it's really worth a watch. I saw it twice. I really can't wait for it to come out. Hopefully physically I'll buy it, but digitally I hope it gets streamed a bunch. It was a great movie, and it deserves another shot. Okay. Yeah, so
I'll have to check that out.
That was my first one, I'd say. Yeah. How about you? What do you got?
All right, so I saw this movie a while ago on a whim, and I'm so glad I decided to watch it because it became one of my favorite indie films.
What movie is that?
It's called Safety Not Guaranteed.
I've heard the name.
Yes. So it is on Netflix right now, and it's fantastic. It's got a great cast. It's got Aubrey Plaza and Jake Johnson, who you might know as Nick Miller from New Girl, if you've ever seen that show.
I think so. Yeah, I think I know both. Yeah.
So it's got a really great cast. Everyone does really good with the acting. Yeah. It's not a very serious film. I mean, it's a comedy, and they treat it as such. It's not taken too seriously. Yeah. So basically the premise is the three people are journalists, and they're looking for a new story to write about. And one of the main characters comes across this ad in the newspaper, and it's this guy who took out a classified ad, and he is looking for a partner to go back in time with. And the ad says something like, I'm looking for someone to go back in time with. You must bring your own weapons. Safety's not guaranteed. And so they think it's a great story. Yeah. So they find this guy, and they try to like understand, does he really think he's going back in time? Is he crazy? Is he just looking for attention? So that's the whole premise of the movie, is they're trying to figure out why this guy put this classified ad out. And all the characters are really likable, and in the end you find out that this character is just a really, really nice guy, and he's not crazy. And everyone is just really well written. I'm trying to avoid spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
It has some like really heartfelt moments, surprisingly, thrown in there. It's got some like good ideas that could be their own kind of like story, which is really interesting.
I love that.
Yeah. And in the end, it just turned out to be a really, really good movie, and it's definitely worth watching.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I'll have to.
Yeah.
It's on Netflix.
It is.
All right. So, Frank.
Yes, Frank.
This is my favorite movie of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I love this movie down to like every single frame.
Mm-hmm.
It's my perfect movie.
Sure. What's the premise?
Okay. So the main character, the main person that we follow and see from their perspective is John. He's a musician who lives in, I believe, England, London, somewhere around in that area. I don't remember the specific region. And there's a band that comes on tour through his town. You never really are sure how to pronounce their name, the Cernferburns. And that's intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And so their keyboardist, this is all in the very beginning, so it's not really spoiling anything. It's just kind of setting it up a little bit. Their keyboardist runs into the ocean the night or the afternoon before their set, and John just happens to be walking by, and he's like, "Oh, you're the guys playing the show tonight," because he'd seen a poster, heard it on my radio, and they're like, "Yep," and he's like, "Oh, like who's that?" Or like, "What's going on here?" And he's like, "That's our keyboardist trying to kill himself," and he's like, "I play keyboard," and he looks at him, walks to the van, and he's like, "Oh no, I didn't mean to." Comes back and he says, "Be at the doors or we'll pick you up at 7:00, something like that."
Uh-huh.
And so then he goes and he plays a show with them, and then they invite him what he believes is like a weekend gig, and it ends up being they're recording an album. And so I'm not going to go too much further in like the storyline, but the characters are like you were saying in the last one, where they all have their own storylines.
Mm-hmm.
The main people it focuses on is John, Frank, who is the lead vocalist of the band and the main inspiration, driving force behind all their creativity.
Uh-huh.
And Maggie Gyllenhaal's character. Those are the three main characters,
Mm-hmm.
as well as, boy, I can't remember his name. But there's two other members of the band. There are 2 or 3 members of the band that aren't them, that I want to know more about them.
Yeah.
I want the movie to be 3 hours long.
Yeah.
And so the main guts that I get out of the movie is portrayed like through John and Frank, and that is the creativity in being able to come up with songs right then and love them and be so confident in them and happy in your ideas. And even though the people don't like his music,
Mm-hmm.
he loves it and he thinks it's amazing, and he wants people to like his music. It's not just making it to make noise,
Right.
and it's thoughtful about a little string from the carpet. And that's something that John would like in the beginning. That's like a struggle. You can tell that that's one of the first things they introduce you to is he's coming up with a song in his head, and he's just like not sure. You can tell he's very like singing in his head, and he's just like, no, 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 no. And then he goes and he writes it down, and he like starts, and then he stops because he's like, this is shit.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a very relatable thing, I believe, for most creators. And what you strive to be is Frank. And every member of the band understands that there can only be one Frank, because like that's impossible. Like to actually like, but it's what I guess is that they're trying to say is it's not necessarily impossible.
Yeah.
And I want to say, just pay attention to the one of the first establishing scenes in John's neighborhood, and one of the final establishing scenes in another neighborhood. They're very similar.
Yes.
The neighborhoods are very similar. The same things happen, and so the entire time John's thinking, oh, it's because they went to the hospital because they need to be like watched over because they were a risk to themselves, or they had other ailments that like caused their pain that made the creativity come, and John just didn't have that badness to him. He didn't have that pain, is I think what he thought he was lacking, and or his muse in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
But he was thinking of the muse in like it has to be like come from like your pain.
Yeah.
And it can, but as Frank showed, that's not what it always has to be. Like you can,
yeah.
And so, and you find out later that like Frank was always Frank. He didn't like become Frank after something happened. And so that's kind of that was the biggest thing to me.
Yeah.
There's something I want to like talk to you about with I don't want to spoil.
Sure.
So I'll tell you later.
Frank is a great movie.
Please add to this. Do you have?
So
I know you've seen it.
Frank is played brilliantly by Michael Fassbender.
Fantastic.
And one thing you didn't mention is the entire movie he wears a huge paper mache head.
Mm-hmm.
And that's his whole. He built his whole persona into this character, Frank, and the whole band. Everyone thinks it's a gimmick. Everyone thinks that's the band and like it's their show, their style, but that's the character. And there's like a whole storyline with that that's really interesting that I don't think gets enough attention throughout the entire story. But it's really good. It's worth watching.
I have a certificate. I have a certificate. I have a certificate.
It's really good. And if you're a fan of like music writing, this movie will speak to you too. Or if you just like to see how like bands create music or like find their creativity, this band will strike a chord, or this movie will strike a chord with you. No pun intended. But it's really good. It's definitely worth watching.
It's got so much silliness in it.
Yes.
But there's so many emotional, heart-wrenching scenes.
It's a roller coaster of a movie.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Every time I watch it, I find something new about it, and I'm like, I like it even more now. Like that's my firm recommendation for Frank.
Nice.
And I bought the reason that this is being brought up is because I bought my DVD at a dollar store. No, I think that's great. Honestly, if I were to release a movie, I'd want to put it in a dollar store too, like everywhere, you know. Yeah. So like that's cool. Yeah. But also like that movie needs to be everywhere.
Was that the first time you saw it?
No. It was on Netflix like 7 years ago or some shit like that. Yep. And I saw it, I believe, there, and then now I've like everything that has Magnolia Studios on it or Magnolia Pictures on it. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good, and it usually is. Yeah. All right,
my last choice is So fun. It's called Turbo Kid.
Okay.
This movie does not take itself seriously at all. Okay, so it's very reminiscent of 80s movies that had really low budgets, but they just wanted to have fun and they just wanted to tell a simple story, but in like the most interesting way possible.
Sweet.
So this movie is the very definition of indie. It had a budget under $60,000, which sounds like a lot of money, but for a movie that's literally nothing. I'm guessing like some actors didn't even get paid in order to make this movie.
Yeah.
Because the entire budget went into costumes, which are so fantastic.
Good.
And probably like one of the main actors who's like a sort of a big star.
Okay.
Otherwise, no one else is known in this movie. It's all unknown actors. And they do so good. They are so funny.
Hell yeah.
It's the most fun I've had in a movie in a while watching this. I rewatched it right before you came just because I wanted it fresh in my head. It's rated R, but it acts like a kid's movie at times. Okay. So keep that in mind. That's like the whole like genre is like, it seems like a movie for kids, but they swear, and it is so over the top gory for no reason.
I love it.
For no reason. Like every time anyone gets hit with anything, blood is like spurting, just like pouring out of people, and it's so great. It's got like an 80s like Stranger Things vibe, even though it came out before Stranger Things. So
cool.
People are going to compare it, but it came before Stranger Things. The soundtrack is so good. Like it always drives like the story, and it's like a character in the movie. And speaking of characters, everyone in this movie is like larger than life, and they're so lovable. I adore this movie. It's
awesome.
Really great.
Hell yeah, I'm gonna have to see it.
Yeah.
What did you say? What the premise was?
So it's a very loose premise.
Okay.
Basically, it's about a boy who's about like 15 years old, and he meets a friend, and his friend gets kidnapped, and so he needs to save this friend. And in the process, he learns the meaning of friendship and revenge. If that makes any sense without spoiling it.
Okay. It lends itself to the kids movie made for adults or something like that. Yeah.
Yes, and it's also like Kids Bop Mad Max. If that makes sense. Like the world is definitely Mad Max, but the rules to it are so funny and so creative. I love it. I love it so much.
Great.
It's so fun.
What's that on? It looks like it's streaming, or is it a DVD?
Amazon Prime.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Highly recommend that one. You will not have a bad time. You will laugh your ass off.
All right. Do we want to wrap this up? I think that was pretty great.
Yeah, that was good.
That was real good.
Next time, I think we're going to be talking about unconventional time travel movies, right?
Unconventional, I guess, is a term that you could use to describe some of them. I've got a few things to say.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, time travel movies.
All right. Sounds good.
See ya.